On to Canada, and we're going to head up to Ontario. Now, Adam, we spend a lot of time talking about the big boys in the industry. We spend a lot of time talking about the big boys that have yet to come in the industry and what we can expect from some of the people that are going to be entering the sports betting realm here pretty soon. We spent a lot of time talking about Coolbet, but guess what? Here we go.
Do it while you can, Matthew, because this is going to mark basically the 1-year anniversary of Coolbet launching in Ontario, which was April 4th. And as of April 3rd of this year, Coolbet will no longer be operating in the legal market in Ontario. To give you a little background, Coolbet was purchased by GAN back in 2020 for $177 million. GAN, largely a B2B supplier in the sports betting industry. But of course, there was a platform there with Coolbet as a business-to-customer option, and they tried to launch in Ontario, and they ultimately said, this is not making financial sense for us. We are not pulling the market share that we thought we were going to. The marketing promotional costs are way higher than we expected. But what I thought was really interesting, and I think is the huge takeaway of this story, Coolbet said, but we're still going to keep operating in Canada in the other provinces where it's gray. Y'all, this is why regulation works, right? They're essentially showing you that the regulated market is paying costs that the gray market is not, and that those costs are going toward ultimately having these legal regulated options that give consumers recourse if things do not go their way, that take responsible gambling more seriously and can enforce standards around it, like having the free bet and risk-free language being eliminated, as we've seen in a lot of states in the US. And the fact that you have this sports book essentially saying, we just can't play in this regulated market, but over here where it's gray in the rest of the country, we're good. We're gonna keep going. Just kind of proves the point that has been made all along throughout this process.
Dustin, just to take a little bit of a tangent here on all of this, most of the states that have launched here, we have been fairly pleased with the numbers that have come out. And some we've even been, surprised at how big the numbers are. And it's certainly initially right out of the gate with some of these states that have launched. Have you, maybe it's just me and maybe I'm just because I had such incredible kind of expectations or whatever, but has Canada kind of disappointed, at least in your eyes, from what we've gotten out of them in the short time that they've been going?
I didn't tell you to set this one up for me, because this is one of the, like Adam was talking about banging drums, man. I bang this drum every chance I get. That Ontario, with the numbers we have seen, I don't have them in front of me, is punching way below its weight, versus the regulated markets in the United States that have both online casino and sports betting. That's the latest numbers you saw from the end of their fiscal year. They still badly trail basically the three biggest iGaming markets that have both forms: Michigan, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. And you say give it time, but the time this was supposed to happen really quickly, right? This is Ontario says, we're going to take the gray market, we're going to put them all in the market, just have a flat start, everybody gets in, not flat start, but there's lots of people regulated as time went on. But right now there's not really this path to growth. Again, we've seen this growth in the United States markets, but this is supposed to be, okay, we're just taking all these operators who are already here and do really well. So again, we always hear Ontario, how well they think they've done. I'm here to tell them still they have not done well. They're still well behind, and whether that's cultural or how they regulated it, they are not realizing the potential of the market. They have, whether Coolbet's a great example of this or not, but the brands in the United States that we're planning on going into Ontario, because of the environment there, have kind of pulled back and are just kind of existing there. They're not really, it's hard for them to promote themselves. It's hard for them to battle against the existing gray markets who already had a database of customers. So it's an interesting one, and we'll see. We continue to get more numbers out of Ontario, but I don't think it's been an overwhelming success, especially when we judge it against everything we've seen here in the United States. You can even compare it against New York. New York handles a lot of money in sports betting versus Ontario, which we know they handle. They renounced their handle for both casino and sports betting. New York's a competitive market with them, even with all of that, at least in terms of how much money is flowing through the ecosystem. So yeah, a lot more to come on Ontario. There's more coming on other provinces as well, I think, here in the not too distant future around this issue and what Ontario has done and looking at what they've done. And I would say, don't just look at Ontario and say, man, they really got it right, we're going to rubber stamp that.
No, not at all. And I think we need to add a couple of things to this. You talk about how Ontario was regulated. Let's be very clear about how Ontario determined that customers could be marketed to, right? There's an opt-in system in Ontario where you can't push a promo offer to someone. You can't push an offer that tells someone about an opportunity in the legal market without their consent. They have to opt in to that marketing. And I can understand it from a responsible gambling perspective. That does make sense from ensuring that people are not bombarded with all of these things and that it's done in a responsible way. However, when we're talking about combating an entrenched gray market, the way that Canada has, the way that the US didn't once all of the offshores had to pull out in a meaningful way because of the threat of enforcement from the federal government here. Well, they didn't have that in Canada. The gray market is operating everywhere except Ontario. And so when you're trying to bring people over from the gray market, that is not a strategy that is going to work. And add to that 3 numbers, 3, 6, 5. You're talking about one of the largest gaming operators in the world that was and is thriving throughout Canada. And that's why we talk about 365 and its US potential so much. Now, obviously, it's a completely different situation where they haven't had the ability to entrench in the market in the same way in the US, but it does show, and we get these numbers largely anecdotally, talking to people or having to glean them from earnings calls, because the Ontario regulator has been the single worst. And I want to make clear to anyone listening to this podcast about regulated gaming, the single least transparent regulator in all of North America. We get the fewest numbers and the least amount of information out of Ontario that we have out of anything. Any state in the U.S. I mean, Arizona reports like 9.5 months behind. Okay, maybe that's an exaggeration, but they report way behind, like 2 months behind everyone else. And they still report every month, which is more transparent than in Ontario. And that's also, I think, in part because Ontario doesn't have as much to yell about. But we hear anecdotally from these operators that, 365 in particular, among the operators that were already in the gray market, is probably still pulling more than just about everybody.
Cold takes exposed for me here for sure. If we went back, before the Canada launch, I was super excited about that. I thought that it was going to be crushing it for sure, just from the culture that I knew from a bunch of professional gamblers living there, a bunch of poker players living there, a bunch of professional DFS players living there. Like, I was positive that it was going to really come out of the gates firing, and that certainly has not been the case.